Welcome to another episode of the NewyTechPeople podcast. On today's episode, we have Ria ODonnell, Managing Director of Custom Learning Design.
Hi,
Welcome.
James.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, I try to open up most of our podcasts for a little bit of an introduction for those of our audience that don't know who you are. Can you give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, so I'm Ria ODonnell, as you just said. I'm the Managing Director of Custom Learning Design. We're actually located at Charlestown in the Dashwork space, which is a really good space to be. We provide training consultancy to businesses, and also we do e-learning development and design.
Very nice. Very nice. That e-learning design has definitely been a space that's grown over the past few years.
Absolutely,
sure.
Yeah.
Nice. You've been in Newcastle. You're in Charlestown, in the greater Newcastle area for quite some time. You always been in Newcastle? What sort of led to you starting a business here in Newcastle?
So it's a good question, actually. So we've been in Newcastle for about 10 years. I am from Sydney. During that time, though, we moved to Melbourne for a couple of years. So one of the reasons that we moved, well, the predominant reason was that my daughter was going to university there, so we all followed along. But one of the reasons was actually that we thought that there'd be better job opportunities. And then the pandemic hit, and then everything went into lockdown, and the world changed, as we know. And then we ended up coming back to Newcastle. And what we've noticed now is that there's just as much opportunity in Newcastle as what there is in Melbourne or any of the other major cities.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the pandemic. Has the pandemic affected your line of business? I know like a lot of things have moved online, training obviously being one of them.
Yep.
Have you seen a massive shift from the way the businesses operate or training gets done from a learning perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So our business is only 18 months old, so we're really new. But prior to having the business, I was doing this sort of thing anyway, just for other companies. So yeah, the pandemic really did change everything. It just turned things into everyone had to upskill with their digital skills. Everyone had to learn sort of to slot into new roles and taking on responsibilities that they didn't usually. Everyone switched to e-learning rather than face-to-face because of the issues with the pandemic. So it really was that big boost for e-learning. But then you started to notice the gaps that came out of that, where it was like people needed that consultancy as well. So you can't just sort of have your CEO or your project manager or whatever, and they say, we need training on this. They actually need to understand the whole flow and the methodology behind it. So the consultancy part is really important as well.
Yeah, very nice. Your business has evolved, 18 months old now, but I know you've got quite the history beforehand, which involves writing a book as well.
Yep.
Super interesting to me. I don't think I've had any guests on the podcast that have written a book before or published a book. So yep. I'd love just some insights into how that came about and that experience.
Yeah, for sure. So the book's actually about learning technologies, which is something that I've been really interested in sort of since they've evolved. I'm showing my age, going back sort of 20 years when you had the first Moodles and wikis and things like that. So I had studied education, technology, globalization, business, all of those sorts of things at university. I've got a number of degrees. I got approached by an agent who was looking for someone to write a book in that sort of area. So then I was able to go through the process with them of getting that approved through university, because it's actually an academic book. So they're using it actually mostly in America in universities, teaching people in that space. So it did need to go through quite a stringent process of being approved by 5 different professors across the world. And it was a really involved thing, but it was just a really great topic to be into, looking at all of the emerging trends in learning technologies, understanding all of the ways that different organizations were moving. But what turned out really well was that it actually coincided with the pandemic as well. So it's something that we were already on board with due to globalization and the digital economy and things like that. And then the pandemic just sort of pushed everything, sped everything up.
Yeah, I love this. Our audience is predominantly technology people. And I think one of the topics we often talk about is learning and career development and, that continual improvement and continual learning. Yeah. So I'm super interested in this space. How has that evolved, the online learning, or as you said, the Moodles, and then we've got different aspects. University is a interesting topic, that comes up very differently. Everyone's got different opinions on the importance of university or university's place in the greater education system.
Yeah,
super interested to just see hear your thoughts on how how it's evolved.
Yeah. So obviously, like with all technologies, it's evolved massively. So
Yeah.
everything, and it feels like the more it does evolve, then the quicker it evolves to something higher and something better. We deal with business learning, not school learning or university learning.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit different. So business learning, I feel, in more recent years has really opened itself up to those types of things, whereas it was a bit more closed off before. It was a bit of a set and forget type learning, or you come to the job already educated in what you should know. They are starting to realize that it's an ongoing thing, and you need to have the tools and the technological frameworks that are embedded to be able to have everyone come along the journey and meet those ongoing changes all the time. In regards to universities, I know that you said that is an interesting topic. Obviously, there is a huge place for universities, but when it comes to the speed of information changing now, we're looking at a completely different world. So it's something that inevitably is going to be revolutionized and changed. How that's going to look, I don't know. But it's definitely something that people are talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I just think access to education, as you said, has grown with globalization and the internet, and access to, you could be sitting here in Newcastle and access to a Harvard professor in a short course or something like that as well.
Yeah,
I definitely believe in universities. I've done a degree myself, and I think that core ability to learn, or learning how to learn, and that using learning the core foundations of a particular subject are really beneficial through university. And then you come out and you add on the short courses or the business specific or organization specific training that I'm assuming that you're involved with.
Yeah, that's right. And you hit the nail on the head saying learning how to learn, because that is the thing now. It's not so much regurgitating the information out of a textbook. It's more so you understand how to go about finding the new information or incorporating that into your way of working and things. And digital skills plays a really big part in that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that'll only continue to change with, more recently ChatGPT as well. Like, you can very easily between Google and ChatGPT, find out some information like that, and even get that to regurgitate some information for you. Just having information regurgitated that you can put in an essay doesn't mean you understand that. So figuring out that learning piece and genuinely learning a topic is going to be super important, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And that is a sticky situation that people have at the moment. When you look at something like ChatGPT, I know that a lot of people will sort of say, oh, no, you can't use it, and they try to push it away. But I look at it more like you've got calculators, and they used to be not allowed because it was considered cheating, but it's a tool that does the job.
Correct.
And then you look at Google. So people had access to Google, and that was seen as, oh, no, you're finding the information, you're supposed to memorize it and so on. But it's more about moving with the technology and understanding it's going to be a part of people's lives.
Yeah.
So how do you use it? How do you make sure that you're not plagiarizing and you are learning how to learn, but still using those tools where they have a place?
Yeah, for sure. There's greater efficiency. Obviously, you can gain by incorporating these tools. I don't think any one of them's a be all and end all, but if you can incorporate a lot of them, you're going to gain a lot of efficiencies and be able to turn out something, hopefully of higher quality or quicker or more efficiently.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, there's a place for them, but yes, it's how to use them.
I think that's a nice little segue, this talking about AI and new technologies into the first chapter of your book, which is technology and the new normal.
Yeah.
Love to get your opinion, a little bit of a deep dive. Obviously, if it's an opening chapter, it's something that you're quite passionate about. I'd love to get your insights from that perspective.
Absolutely. So in that chapter, it does address some of the things I mentioned before, like you're looking at your globalization and your digital economy and the enablers of those things. But then you're also looking at the way that the world has shifted, and technology is a really important and integral part of that. So everyone is working from home some of the time. They're traveling everywhere. Like, life is a lot different to what it used to be when you're talking about the workplace. And without technology, those things wouldn't be possible. So when you're looking at the new normal of business, you're looking very much at things like artificial intelligence, your collaboration tools, software, of course, all of those types of automation and things like that. But then you've also got to consider the other side of that when it comes to cybersecurity and safety online and those other new skills that people actually have to learn.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting part there as well. These new tools that'll come along, there is a learning curve to actually come up to speed with them before you actually generate the efficiencies on the back end, right?
Yeah, that's right. I actually heard someone talking the other day. with something about that, where you said you have to sort of keep up with it. So if you think about software that we use now, where it used to be you implemented a software system, you could use it in the workplace. Now most things are hosted in the cloud, so there's continuous updates. So you need to be learning about, what does this new functionality do, and what does this button do? And there is that continuous learning that goes on as well. Again, it's not just that set and forget.
Yeah, I agree. I think learning, e-learning and learning for businesses obviously is a big part in creating a competitive advantage for businesses. I think businesses, we're in the talent or the people business, right?
Yeah.
I genuinely believe people are the biggest differentiator between businesses having success and not, and keeping those people educated and up to speed is a big part of that. Have you worked with many companies where you've really seen a big change where they've implemented some learning or some training internally where you've seen, significant differences in the business?
Yes, probably the best examples that I've seen of that would be your large scale projects, where they are implementing a new software program and processes and things like that across the organisation. And when they do manage the learning framework for that, then it can be so much more effective than if they don't. So one of the other examples there is mergers. So when you've got two companies that merge together and there's a huge learning curve to go on there, being able to sort of effectively teach both sides of the merger into sort of becoming one organisation is something that's really delicate, but if done well, it's something that I've seen be really successful.
Oh, definitely. I think you're not only creating efficiencies, but you're eliminating a bunch of problems from that side if you do that well.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. You mentioned you've got a couple of degrees before. Yeah. This is an interesting topic where a niche topic, I guess, where you've landed. What's your career path? Obviously, from an education perspective, through to early career to get to where you are today. So I'd love to get a little bit of background on how you come to where you're at today.
Yep. So back in another lifetime, I was actually a teacher. Yeah. So my first degree was a Bachelor of Teaching. Yeah. So that's obviously got me into education for my whole life. And I was just really, really interested in everything behind the education, not just what to teach people. So obviously technology played a huge part in that. The next degree I did was my Master of Education, and I majored in technology for that one. And then more recently, I did a graduate certificate in globalization, but it was in the School of Education. So again, it was the same types of topics, but we were looking at the globalization and the impacts across the world when you're looking at social mobility and people being able to access learning that usually couldn't. And in between those, I actually started doing an MBA at Newcastle Uni, which was awesome, but I didn't finish that one.
Nice. You're obviously real well invested in that education space, obviously. Yep. What was your experience through university like? We mentioned before the learning how to learn was a big part, and I think you agreed there. Is there any other mass benefits you found through your education degrees?
Yeah, I found obviously going to university is really valuable, not just because of the information that you learn, but more about the personal development. So the way that you're able to collaborate and grow with other like-minded people, the way that you're exposed to information that you may not otherwise have been exposed to. And then, of course, when you need to do assessments and things, then it's sort of forcing you down that road of learning new topics and things that you might not otherwise take that time to do. So I think it's really valuable in that way.
Yeah, very nice. You obviously finished your degrees and you went into teaching to start with?
Yeah, I went into teaching to start with.
Yeah. How did you transition from teaching to where you are today?
Yeah. Again, that's a really good question because it's something that a lot of teachers are looking at doing at the moment. So I'm finding that to be increasingly popular. So when I left teaching, it was a really big jump to sort of go from a stable job and I'm going to go into the corporate world. At the time, my children were younger, so I'd enjoyed the school holidays, being able to look after them, which was something really important to me. So moving into the corporate world was a big jump for me. From there, though, I was able to really use those skills that I'd learnt in teaching and then put that different lens on it and say, everyone needs to learn all the time. It's not just kids. So how does this continuous lifelong learning journey go and how can that be developed in the workplace?
So that led to you leaving teaching and starting consultancy, or is it?
Oh yeah, sorry. Because that was when I had left teaching and
Yeah,
went into the corporate space.
yeah,
Yeah, so I was in the corporate space, doing like learning and development
beautiful.
management and doing being a training consultant. But it wasn't until around 18 months ago that I actually started my own company
Very
in that
nice.
space.
I'll dig into that right quickly. How was that experience jumping out and running, starting your own business?
It's actually really good. It was daunting to start with, and obviously, as it would be, I've actually had another business before that though, so I had that little bit of advantage of understanding that, and they're both companies as well, so I had the understanding of how to sort of set it all up. It was daunting because you're going into the unknown, not knowing if it's going to take off. We've been really, really lucky because it's just the right place at the right time. Everybody needs to have learning in their organizations. It's an unsaturated market for now. I mean, there's plenty of providers, but it still is unsaturated. So the demand is higher than the supply. We were lucky enough to get some really big clients as well. So in Melbourne and Sydney. So that's sort of carried us through. And then we're also working with a lot of little clients as well.
Very nice. Very nice. And what does the future look like in an ideal world? Is it just continual growth? Do you see that market continuing to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely will grow. And what I'd like to see is the advancements in educational technologies. So when you've got all your startups, which I'd love to invest in actually, if you have any other listeners that are interested in building these things, because there's so many exciting opportunities in that education space at the moment for technology. I think it is going to keep growing. It's the perception of it as well that's changing. So people are understanding that learning is a lifelong thing. It's no longer just for childhood or whatever the thought was. It is definitely expanding, and it's going to be really exciting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we touched on it before, but that you mentioned, there was an expectation for some companies previously, maybe that somebody comes in with all the key skills, that's what they hired for, they're good to go, leave them there, they'll do their job. But the world and technology is obviously influencing that massively, like continues to change and evolve, jobs and companies change and evolve. And for people to continue to succeed is that ongoing investment in training and development. I think I've seen in maybe the past 5-7 years, companies place greater importance on internal, learning and development and training programs.
Yeah, definitely. I heard someone using the analogy. They said it's like if you were a professional tennis player, for example. If you were to go out on the court and play a game all the time, 8 hours a day, you're really going to run yourself down and not be able to perform at your best or learn any new skills. If you're able to go away and do some coaching, then you're obviously going to perform better. So it's the same way in business, that you need to take that time and you need to actually coach yourself in where things are going, because things are constantly changing, as we know, because of all the technological advancements in the workplace in general. So people do need to take that time. In custom learning design, we actually have an hour of power. So every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, everyone just has to spend the hour learning something new, so they can source things from LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, YouTube, wherever they choose. And then they need to learn about that topic. It can be anything associated with our business. So whether it's like the neuroscience of learning or graphic design skills or whatever it may be. And then they come together in groups and share what they learned. So that way people are able to share that knowledge as well.
Beautiful. One of the other things you mentioned before, I think I just find quite passionate about it, is that the access for people around the globe, or people in maybe more unfortunate situations than we are, to access learning, access education that they otherwise might not have had the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
I understand you work more in the business space at the moment, but how do you see that space continuing to evolve?
I think that that's going to evolve, and it's going to be a real game changer globally for everybody who is in maybe less fortunate positions to be able to uplift themselves if that's what they choose. There's a really good video that I've seen on YouTube. I think it's called The Hole in the Wall, or it was a documentary. And it's where in a sort of slummy area of India, where they've put a computer in the wall, sort of covered in glass so it can't be damaged and whatever. And with no instructions or anything. And all of the children in the town are sort of coming over and experimenting with it, and they're actually figuring out how to use it by themselves. And it just shows that if you give them the tool, people are really intuitive and they actually know how to start start the learning journey. And once you learn one piece, then it sort of leverages you to learn the next piece and the next piece. And I think that we're going to see a huge shift globally in people being able to access not only the education, but the jobs as well, because they'll get educated and then they can work on Teams or on Zoom or whatever, and it's actually accessible for the first time.
Yeah, and I think that got fast-tracked because of the pandemic, obviously. I think there were companies beforehand that, gave flexibility with working and working in the office or working remotely. Everyone was forced to do that during the pandemic. So it fast-tracked everything because there's no excuses anymore. We had to do it. And now we're sort of post-pandemic, hopefully, and companies making those decisions, but no longer is there an excuse that we can't do it.
That's right.
So I think that's just fast-tracked that whole decision-making process around remote work or access to do that, which then opens up. The first step is, hey, we've got current employees, we're going to allow to work remotely. The next stage is, and it might not be the next, but a couple of rungs down the track is we could hire fully remotely from another country.
Yes, absolutely.
Potentially another time zone. And I don't think most companies are there yet, but it does open. There's definitely a path to that happening.
Yeah, there's a path to it happening, and it also allows people to access the best talent, because you're no longer just limited to a radius of 20 kilometres from where your office is. So,
correct.
It's like you can actually just scour the globe and find the best people for the best jobs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then personally, from an educational perspective, do you have a book or a podcast that you recommend to anyone that you think's either been significant for you in your continual learning?
If I think of a book and a podcast, probably the standout book for me sort of on this topic would be The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. So I don't know if you've read that one, but it's a bit about all of the technological advancements that he...
Is it an orange cover?
It's white and orange,
yeah.
All of the technological advancements that he thinks are inevitable.
Yeah.
And then he sort of gives different examples of how they could play out, but saying nonetheless they'll still play out. It's just how does it sort of unfold. And then thinking about podcasts, the one that I've just started listening to at the moment, which is really good, there's actually only one episode available so far, but it's The Learning Lounge.
Yeah.
And it's actually people talking about learning technologies.
Yeah.
So they're talking about analytics and gathering the data and how you're actually using the information that you're collecting and using that to re-inform what you're teaching people next and things like that. So it's really good.
Yeah, nice. I do like Kevin Kelly. I think I came across him on a couple of episodes of the Tim Ferriss podcast as well, and that's how I came into his books as well. So I think it's super interesting. And then for the people that, again, our list is predominantly technology, but somebody that might be, in a business and looking at, how to improve their technology or how to improve their learnings. For those of our listeners that, that came across you for the first time today and have an interest in this learning space and how they might be able to, look at their internal processes or internal learning and development, how do people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me through our website, customlearningdesign.com.au would be the best way. You could drop into the Dashworks office if you're up at Charlestown. There's always at least a couple of us in there. We're always ready to have a chat with people and even just to talk about what their potential needs would be in the future and things. It's great to just start those discussions.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for coming in and spending your time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.